Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to use input boxes and use that to get input from the user and then outputting a response, not necessarily using an alert, but actually printing it right on the web page. So to begin with, you use Sublime Text here, and you want to create an HTML file. I've saved this already as inputboxes.html. And remember, we want to start with our HTML structure. And if we just start creating the HTML tag, you'll see this pop up in Sublime Text. If we hit enter, it's going to give us the full structure here of our page. Okay, and as we said before, all of our CSS styles are going to go inside the head tag. I'm just going to make a style tag right now. And so all my styles are going to go up there to make it look pretty. Our script tags are going to be inside our body. So I create script tags, put some spaces so that all our script can go in there. And finally, we want some other HTML tags. Now for this, we first of all, I'm going to make an input box. And so that's using the input tag. And the type is going to be equal to text. And even though it puts name in here, and there are other languages that would use that, we could grab it with JavaScript, but we're going to instead use an ID. And it doesn't matter what the ID is, think of it like a variable. And so I'm just going to call this input box. Makes sense. Beside that, I'm going to make a button, and I'm going to just give it a name. You put your name between the two button tags. And inside that first button tag, I'm going to put a special property called onClick. And in there, we're going to put the name of our function. Now, you can name it whatever you want. I'm going to call this one process form. And it's important you make sure you put those two brackets there. That indicates that we're running a form when we click the button. So onClick, run that function. And that's going to be a JavaScript function that we create. So down here, let's make that function. Var process form equals function. And now we want to do something with it. Okay, so let's make a variable first. And I'm going to say var input box equals document.get element by ID, and it needs to be spelled exactly like that with a capital B, capital I, capital E. All right, because this is a built-in property or function. And now we just need to put in the ID of the element we're grabbing. So we're going to grab the input box. Okay, and it doesn't quite matter where you put this, but I'm actually going to take that and I'm going to move it outside of my function, and I'll explain why. By moving it outside the function, that means that this variable is going to be populated the moment the page is run at the beginning. And so now inside this function, it allows us to have other functions as well that can refer to this, because now this is a global variable, not local. If we left this inside the function, it would be a local variable and it would be limited to just this function. So if we had another function in our script that wanted to refer to this variable, it wouldn't work. We would have to recreate that variable again, which we could do, but this way is a little nicer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a variable input value, and that's going to be equal to input box dot value. Okay, and so essentially that is that element's value. Okay, and that's going to be equal to whatever the user typed into that input box. All right. Now we want to do something with it. All right, we want to give a response to the user, and we want to put it on the web page. there's a bunch of ways to do this, but the way that I'm going to show you is by using a div. And so I'm going to use a special div tag, and just like the input box, we're going to give it an ID, and I'm going to give it an ID of content box. All right. Now, what a div is, it's basically a section on the page. It resizes dynamically based on the content that's inside it, unless you specify its width and height in the CSS. You can populate it right now, so we can say this is the original content, and just to show you that the first time you load the page, this is going to show, but when we run this function by clicking the button, we're going to repopulate it. We're going to erase what's in there and fill it with our own content. Just like this input box, let's just copy that and make a new one, and I'm going to call this content box. Oops. And make sure the ID is the same as what we were referring to. So now this variable points to the div. This one points to the input box. All right. Now here, var, actually no, we don't even need to make a new variable. We're going to use content box dot inner HTML. All right, so that refers to the HTML that's inside that div, and we're going to make it equal to, we can make it equal to whatever we want. We can just put a string in there. We're going to do a combination. We're going to put a string in there, and we're going to add on the value that they entered. So you entered the following plus input value. All right. Really simple, just to show you how they work. So here we are, got this, our script ready. Let's right click and open in browser. Alright, so we've loaded it. You can see it's got, this is the original content, just as we expected. And we've got our text box and a button. And so now if we type something and click enter, notice it's replaced with what we specified. You entered the following input value. Input value is hello there, it goes there. Now usually when you click enter, it deletes whatever was in the input box, because so that the user can type something else. So we can do that as well. So right after we do that, we can have input box dot value and make that equal to nothing. And let's just see how that runs. It still grabs it, still puts it there, but it makes this empty. All right. There's another thing that we can do. We can have input box dot focus, and what that should do is make the cursor go back into the text box so that we don't have to click on it again in order to type. So now if we refresh the page, we type something and click enter, it grabs the content and the text box is refocused so that we can continue typing something else. Now in a practical aspect, what you'd probably want to do is ask them a question here. What is your name? And often we'll have this above the input box, so we can do that. Our response, we can change that. Now let's refresh it. What is your name? Etc. And you could even add on to this another question. And you can see how that works. And that's how you use input boxes and buttons to grab content and put content back onto the page.